So again, maybe I just missed it in their study, but I think they failed to consider the fact that if we are living in a simulation, then the laws of nature that we would perceive would be programmed into it, not actual real things. So, gamma ray activity, like they were talking about, would be programmed to behave a certain way within the simulation. So, testing it within the simulation is not going to reveal its true nature outside of the simulation. Even if you could create an accurate miniature universe, with which they said they couldn't. But so, like I said, maybe they did address that and I just missed it. I don't know, but it seems more like the kind of thing you would notice as a philosopher. It's a logical observation. Sometimes scientists are so focused on the tiny details, they miss the overall picture, which is, what the heck is the point of testing the behavior of programmed objects? I mean, if the programmers want us to believe gamma rays behave in a certain way, then they will. A better testing theory is proposed by John Barrow, who is a mathematician at Cambridge University. He said, if we live in a simulated reality, we might expect to see occasional glitches and small drifts in the laws of nature over time. Gradually, little flaws would begin to build up unless the creators of the simulation intervene to patch up the problems one by one as they arise. And he said the inhabitants and scientists of a simulation would occasionally be puzzled by the experimental results they obtain. And for example, he cited this study right here showing a 4 sigma deviation over the redshift range that scientists could find no explanation for, which is not necessarily evidence that we live in a simulation, but his point is still valid. So if the creators of the simulation, he says, used error-correcting computer codes to put things back on track, then mysterious sudden changes would occur that would appear to contravene the laws of nature. And you don't have to be a scientist to know that there are plenty of unexplained phenomena in our world. So while he may not have specifically gone over the details of how you would prove the existence of the simulation using unexplained phenomena, he didn't exactly detail that. But we obviously have some of the proof that he mentioned already, because like I said, you don't have to be a scientist to know that there are plenty of unexplained phenomena in our world that scientists cannot explain. And some of it does seem to contradict the laws of nature. And if we live in a kind of simulated reality, that could explain the unexplainable. So there's actually this professor at Oxford University who has presented the argument that, if I understood correctly, we are almost certainly living in a computer simulation if computer simulations have been created at some point and used. So, as far as I can tell, he doesn't address whether it matters if the simulations were created by humans or if they were just created by any civilization ever anywhere in the universe. To me, it seemed like he focused more on the possibility that we could create these simulations in our own future and then run ancestor simulations. So he says we would first have to survive to that level of technological advancement. And there's this high possibility that we won't make it that far, but instead go extinct. And he gives the example of Earth being hit by a giant meteor, which I thought was interesting. But he says if humanity does survive to the technological level to be able to create simulated realities and is also interested in running ancestor simulations, then he says we are almost certainly living in a simulation right now, because the number of simulated people in that scenario would far surpass the number of real people. So I don't know about you, but I think it's highly likely that some civilization somewhere in the universe at some time developed simulations and used them. And he's saying if that's true, we're almost certainly in one right now. And that may explain not only the scientific anomalies, but also the profound statements Jesus made about how we're able to move mountains if we just believe. And even when he said that we will be able to do the things he did and more. I mean, it's so weird. John 14, he says, "He that believes in me, the works that I do shall he do also, and greater works than these shall he do." Okay, so notice he says first right here in John 14 that he is the way, the truth, and the life. So he's saying those that believe in the way, the truth, and the life will do the works of the way, the truth, and the life, and even greater works. Whatever you ask in the name of the way, the truth, and the life, that he will do. So ask in the name of truth and you will receive. Ask in the name of life and you will receive. I mean, I don't know, that's one level of what he's saying here. But if he's referring here to the works he did of raising the dead and walking on water, then maybe he was telling us we live in a simulation, in which case it might be easy to walk on water because obviously it wouldn't really be water. I don't know, but even if that were true, how would believing something make it possible? I mean, granted, a positive attitude can change a person's behavior, and that can change some of what occurs in their life. I mean, that's true whether we're in a simulation or not. And the same is true of having a negative attitude. But what if you have a neutral attitude and you observe things going on around you that do not conform to the laws of nature that you were taught? Like John Barrow explained, those unexplained circumstances could be indications that we're living in a simulated reality. So this 1920s psychologist, Carl Jung, talked about unexplained yet observable patterns in life, and he called them synchronicities or meaningful coincidences. And after discussing it with Einstein and Wolfgang Pauli, he believed there were parallels between synchronicity, relativity theory, and quantum mechanics, and that possibly life was not a series of random events, but rather an orderly framework. But as far as I know, he was never able to scientifically explain why these synchronicities exist. But if we live in a simulated reality, that would explain it. And the Harvard psychiatrist Dr. John Mack also came to the conclusion that unexplainable events that some call alien abductions, he came to the conclusion that they were really objectively happening to some people, and that it was perhaps due to some element beyond our boundaries of awareness. For example, an interception by someone or something that exists extra dimensionally. I mean, he did these studies for decades, and there are some Star Trek episodes that address this concept in a way, the concept of living in a simulated reality. I'll leave a link below to this one if you want to watch it. But this episode is about a rescue of a group of people off a planet that was rendered uninhabitable by a cataclysm, but they never knew that they were rescued. They were made to believe that they were still living on their own planet, when in reality, they had been moved to a holodeck representation of their planet, and the holodeck program was gradually altered to acclimate them to the environment of the new planet they were going to be relocated to. And then even after they were relocated to that planet and beamed down to that new planet, they never knew that they spent any time on the ship at all. So if we are living in a simulation, like many of the greatest minds say is highly probable, then that may be why all these things are happening that seem to defy basic common sense. I mean, it may even be possible that we entered this simulation in recent years, and maybe on 9/11 or maybe in the 90s. I mean, maybe we were already rescued and we're living on a holodeck right now, slowly being acclimated to a new world. I mean, I don't know, it's just a thought, but there are other indications that the authors of the Bible may have known we're living in a simulation, besides the statements that Jesus made. Like this statement in Song of Solomon 2, the beloved stands behind our wall, showing himself through the lattice. Well, the interesting thing about that choice of word, lattice, quote unquote, is that it's the word the physicists use, like this test done by the University of Washington. It's the word they use to describe the framework in which they conduct their nuclear experiments, basically, from what I understand. And in this Discovery News article, they imply the lattice is the actual name of the computer-generated universe. And also interesting is that crystal molecules naturally form a lattice, and there are plenty of scriptures in the Bible that talk about the firmament being made of crystal. Revelation 4:6, before the throne there was a sea of glass like unto crystal. Ezekiel 1:22, the likeness of the firmament was as the color of the terrible crystal stretched forth over the heads above. Revelation 15, the sea of glass. Revelation 21, the city was like glass. And then even Job described the sky as a molten looking glass. So if we are living in a simulation, then the question is, who is controlling it? And if we can improve things in this simulation, then how do we go about doing it? And well, Jesus recommended asking. He said, if you ask and believe with your whole heart that you have received, then you will receive. I mean, it sounds pretty crazy, but if we are in a simulation, then that might explain how that's possible. I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to stop now. I just, again, as always, to those of you that are supporting this work, thank you so much. I am actually not going to be making weekly videos for a little while because I need to update the last year's version of the book to include some of the important discoveries and events that occurred in the last year. And I also need to work on the book that I've been trying to write for at least the last 7 years. And that's about the nature of the soul. I mean, I know it sounds kind of out there, but it's this idea that I haven't heard anyone else talk about, and it's been nagging at me for a while. So like I said, that needs to be done, at least the rough draft. So I know that some of you look forward to the weekly videos. So I just want to say, you can check out the playlists on my channel, Proof the Visions Come True and Watch Date Fulfillments, or the Bible Prophecy playlist that's linked below if you need food for thought. I mean, there's a ton of information in those playlists that I don't even fully comprehend. And there's some really deep material in there. So if you miss the vids while I'm working on this other project, just check the links below in the playlist that I just mentioned. And also, if you know of any publishing companies that might give an advance for this next project that I'm working on, let me know, because I could, that would be helpful. So hopefully it won't take too long so I can come back here and focus on this again, but I've got to do that for now. So I hope you're doing well. I'll keep in touch, and maybe I'll talk to you in a few weeks. Okay, bye-bye.